Tencent, Prosus, NASPERS. That's what we're going to be trying to break down in today's video. If you've been watching any of Monish Barai's most recent videos, he's been speaking very highly of the big Chinese tech company called Tencent. And we've only recently learned that one of Monish Barai's good friends, this guy Speir, who's also written a fantastic book called The Education of a Value Investor, has recently taken a position with a company called Prosus.
People will explain. I'll just give one example of that. So they're South African guys, and I missed them for the first 10 years. They are the people who run the South African company called NASPERS, and now they have moved some of that value, some of the ownership of they own a very large company called Tencent, and they have a number of venture capital investments. And some of it is in NASPERS, and some of it is in a Dutch company called Prosus. But they actually talk through their investments in a very clear and open way that would make sense to somebody like you or me, Ashok. And so in my case, for example, that company has become a position in my portfolio because I am very confident of the ways in which they're investing and their capacity to explain it to me.
So in today's video, we're going to try and break down what's the best option if you're wanting to get exposure to Tencent. Should you buy Tencent directly? Should you look at buying into NASPERS and then Prosus? That's what we're going to try and unpack in today's video. Right, before we crack into it though, just a very high level overview of this whole NASPERS Prosus Tencent arrangement, just in case you're unfamiliar with it. Basically, it all boils down to around 20 odd years ago, NASPERS, which is a South African company listed on the South African Stock Exchange, bought about a 30% stake within Tencent. Obviously, Tencent wasn't the behemoth that it is today, and they've held this stake over the last 20 odd years. Now that NASPERS is such a big part of the Johannesburg Stock Exchange, making up over 25%, there's been a few issues and dramas around different institutional investors. Now they have to trim positions, maybe if they don't want to, because they're having too much exposure just to NASPERS and Tencent. So what NASPERS has done is they've spun out a company called Prosus, which they own, which is listed on the Amsterdam Stock Exchange. There's a bit of a share swap agreement between the two companies there, but essentially they're both trading below their net asset value. So that's what we're going to break down in the second part of the video. Hopefully that's a little bit clearer there, or the ownership of who owns what there. If you want to dig a little bit deeper into that, I highly recommend you go over and check out some of Andrew Brown's videos on this. He's done some fantastic work breaking this down into a lot more finer detail than what I have just then. So now there's a couple of different ways you go about this if you're wanting to make an investment with Tencent. You could invest directly with Tencent, giving you great exposure to a number of different companies as well. As remember, Tencent has quite a vast equity portfolio within the business, somewhere around the $300 billion range. Some very big companies that you're all probably very familiar with: Tesla, JD.com, Sea Limited. There's a number of different businesses within Tencent itself. So there's that option. You could invest directly through Tencent. Or the second option, or third option, is you could invest via NASPERS or Prosus, which are both currently trading below their net asset value. So not only are you getting exposure to Tencent, which is arguably trading at an attractive price, you're also getting another built-in margin of safety within these other two investment vehicles, either NASPERS or Prosus. There's arguments to be made which is better, NASPERS or Prosus. Me personally, I think Prosus is probably the better move, as there's a lot more room for growth within the Amsterdam Stock Exchange, whereas NASPERS, it's making up currently around 25% of the Johannesburg Stock Exchange, which they've got a share agreement between both NASPERS and Prosus, where they're trying to release some of their shares within NASPERS into Prosus, which will make it a larger position on the Dutch Stock Exchange. We're going to have a look at the current net asset value of Prosus, and this is pulled directly from Prosus's website. So as of 30th of September 2021, the asset value of Prosus was 211 billion. Now if you back out the cash and debt minus 3 billion, that gives you a net asset value of 208 billion. Now if you work that out on a net asset value on a per share basis, that works out to be around 123 euros per share of assets. Now, if we just have a look at the assets within Prosus, there obviously a big chunk of that is the Tencent holding, currently at 164.1 billion of Tencent ownership, and then it just breaks down the list. We've got other companies there: Delivery Hero, Trip.com, Skillsoft, and these are a lot of the other assets on their balance sheet, and then a lot of unlisted assets as well within the company. So now if we look at Prosus, it's currently trading around that 78 euro mark. If we divide that by their net asset value, works out to be around a 35% discount on their net asset value. As it stands today, Prosus's current market cap is around 165 billion. Now if you look at the ownership stake within Tencent, it's currently around that 164 billion. So you're essentially buying into Prosus at the moment for just their stake that they have in Tencent. Everything else is just an added bonus on top of that. So pretty good margin of safety built in there if you look at their net asset value. Now Prosus have recently come out and said they're expecting a large rise in earnings per share for the first half of 2022. The firm said on Tuesday as it gained proceeds of $12.3 billion from selling part of its stake in Tencent, which they've also come out and said they're not planning on selling anymore, but they did trim their Tencent stake by 2%. In a pre-market statement, Amsterdam-based Prosus said earnings per share for the 6 months that ended on September 30th would be up 439% and 446% from $1.85 per share for the corresponding year earlier period. It added the core headline earnings per share, a non-stated measure, and used it to indicate operating performance would be up 5 to 12% from $1.34 per share. The improvement was mainly driven off the back of an increase in dividends it received from Tencent, in which it still holds a 28.9% stake, worth around 157 billion euros or 179 billion US after selling 2% in April. And they've also come out and said that they're not planning on selling any more of their Tencent stake within the next few years as well. There's definitely some risks and some concerns around investing into Prosus or NASPERS or even Tencent to that extent. A lot of the concerns I've seen recently around will they ever be able to bridge the gap from where they're currently trading to get more closer to their net asset value or even above. Look, that's yet to be known, but they are trying to implement things to try and bridge that gap between the two. Also, you've got the political issues with what's going on in China and Evergrande and everything at the moment. That's well above my pay grade, so I don't even want to try and speculate on trying to predict that in any way, shape or form. But by all means, go down that rabbit hole and learn more about that if you're interested to try and understand that area. Myself, I have a basic understanding of that sort of stuff going on in the wider macro environment, but it's not an area that I really focus on. I try and more focus on the businesses itself and try and sort of blanket out any of that other noise that's going on out in the wider sort of macro environment. That's just what I'm currently doing. So if you were wanting to invest in Tencent, I think all three options are pretty good options. You can go down the road of just investing directly with Tencent. It's currently trading in an attractive price, I feel, or you could go down the road of NASPERS. Now this may be a little bit more trickier depending on where you are in the world. I know for me here in Australia, it's a lot harder for me to get access to invest into the South African market, but both NASPERS and Prosus are trading below their net asset value as it currently stands. And like I said, will it ever bridge that gap? Hard to say, but they're obviously trying their hardest to try and bridge that gap at the moment, and they've been trying a few years on that now as well, so don't know how long that will take. But yeah, it's a lot easier for me here in Australia to get access to invest into Prosus via the Dutch stock exchange. I can get access through my eToro portfolio, which I've taken a very small position as it currently stands, but I have also sold a put contract through Interactive Brokers as well. But I don't know if that is going to get put to me or not. But it's definitely a company that I have been doing a lot more research and reading on over these last sort of few weeks, as we have seen Monish talking quite highly about Tencent over these last sort of few months. But I'd love to hear from you guys. What's your sort of take on it? Are you investing into Tencent directly, or NASPERS or Prosus, or what's your sort of take on it? Any other sort of good reading you've got on this, definitely drop it in the comments below, as I'd like to dig a bit more deeper on this. Anyway guys, that's going to wrap us up for today. If you did enjoy today's video, please do us a favour, hit that like button, helps push these videos out a bit further. And if you're not currently subscribed, hit that subscribe button, that way you can stay up to date when the next video drops. Alright guys, stay safe, till next time, catch you in the next video.